and welcome to DUFC's Quaran-Tea Time Q&A. In this video, Lucy Johnson, who is one of the club's highest achieving international fencers, will answer your questions about fencing internationally. The video is a bit long, so we put the timestamps for each question in the description below, so you can skip ahead to what interests you the most. I hope you enjoy. Over to Lucy.
So I came to fencing quite late, so all of my experience has been sort of jumbled together and shoved on top of itself. So I started back in 2014 in DUFC, and so I guess my first international exposure was fencing on the student sort of Irish team many moons ago now, and sort of that lit a spark, I guess you could say, for me in terms of what was possible and sort of how big the fencing world is. And I think the beauty of fencing is that everyone is so different in terms of their style, and the idea there was going, well, okay, if there's X many styles in Ireland, how much greater is that going to be when you get onto the international circuit? So I think I've been fencing on it for sort of 3 or 4 years now. Everything sort of merges together after a while. Ireland is quite a small village in terms of fencing. I would say the UK is not much bigger, but certainly enough that you can feel the difference in terms of the possibilities of training. But when I was in Ireland, I trained with DUFC 4 or 5 times a week. I would sort of make the effort to go down to the pentathlon centre on Friday to mix up who I was training with. And then in the summer, when sessions went down a little bit, it was all about going out to Pembroke. And it was all of just basically giving yourself as much chance as possible to fence different people and different styles. And I think you can get caught up very easily in Ireland with essentially fencing the same group of people every session. And that's not to say that's a bad thing, but it also means that you then get to a competition and you know exactly what that person is going to do. So whilst in the UK, because the pool of fencers is just that little bit bigger, you just get more variety in terms of training, in terms of styles. You get more women on the circuit for you women fencers out there. Britain, in terms of competing, I wouldn't say there is a huge difference in terms of the British circuit and the Irish circuit as much as some people might think. I'd say the difference is the scale of the competition. So your likelihood of fencing different people is much higher. So let's say there's 60 people in a competition rather than 16. So your pool match every time you go to an event is going to be different. But I would say in terms of the experience of a competition where you sort of have different levels of fencers at each tier that you get through as you win matches, that's very similar in the UK. You'll basically have an elongated tier where the matches become harder, actions become neater, people are getting smarter about how they're fencing as you work through it. That, in comparison to internationals, you're basically starting at the top tier. You're basically in a finals match from the moment you step on piste, and if you are not psyched up for that, you will basically be punished for not doing that accordingly. The difference between training in the UK and Ireland and the difference between training in one of the top fencing countries in the world is a gap that, if I'm honest, is insurmountable. Any fencer who has become anything has gone and trained in one of the great countries. So good example, Georgina Usher, who won a couple of World Cup medals, who's now CEO of British Fencing. She went to Hungary for 4 years. So basically, if you want to be that good, you need to go and train with the right sort of people. There is only so far you will get by training with people who are just of a different standard, if I'm being completely honest. If I want to go and be #1 in the world, I better move to Estonia tomorrow. So that comes back to sort of deciding what you want to get out of an international competition. You can get quite a long way. You can probably get to, if you're really training properly, you can get to a last 16, a last 8 in a good competition. And challenge people, and I think beyond that, it's still going to be a one-off in terms of competition. You just have to go abroad. A lot of people that are on the great teams don't have jobs. They're in sort of army in the army reserves, so they get sort of free funding. They get gym sessions every day. They get free physio. They get rigorous training sessions. And, you even see it in the GB athletes who are trying to be at that level and training in Britain. I'm working a lot with Ben Peggs at the moment, and he's like, right, well, I wake up at 8 and I train all morning. And you have to be training every day relentlessly. You see the GB foilists down at Lyon Pool, and 4 or 5 days a week they're training there every morning. So one, you can't have a job to do that, or you can't have study to do that. But there's still a gap, to be honest, to a certain extent, just because of the variety of people you get to fence. The experience of the people that you're fencing is different. So there might be a couple of superstars and you can go and fence against them, but you'll get to know their style relatively quickly. And the trick there is, you need to go to somewhere like in Estonia, where they've got 4 world-class athletes sitting at the top of that. And for me, I go, so what's underneath that? Who are they training against locally that make that good? Are they, and like you talk about, you can go to Georgia and train with the Russian second team, and you're like, this Russian team is going to be better than any fencer that we can create in an environment where you don't have a fencing mentality and a fencing mantra and a fencing setup that is catering to people who want to be world-class athletes, sadly. And that said, I think you have to decide where the gap is, and everything that you can possibly do, you need to be stopping. So I remember making a choice when I started fencing the Irish pentathletes, going, they can beat me on skill, but they are not going to beat me on fitness, and they're not going to beat me on strength, because they are 2 things that I can categorically do on my own that no one can take away from me. So I should be able to bounce on a piste as fast and as effectively as a world-class pentathlete, because I can do that. I can go running, I can do cardio workouts, I can go to the gym and lift weights till I get stronger. What I can't do is get the finite point control to really make the difference. But if I've got everything else, I've got a chance of fighting. So I think the trick is, you do everything you possibly can. You go to every training you possibly can. You mix up your training as much as possible. You go to international events as much as possible, and go on summer courses and go to Hungary and try and find a summer camp for you to go and fence against different people. And just, you have to put the time in a different way than a kid who grows up in Russia and gets to go to their local club in Moscow that's full of world-class athletes. You have to make the effort to get out there and fence different people in a different way. But it's possible, and people have done it in Ireland, in the UK. So it's not impossible, but you need to seek it rather than it being given to you. So officially, I work in recruitment. So how I balance work around training is I have to sneak out the office to get to training on time. Frankly, anytime you get a full-time job, sport in general takes a hit. You need a different level of commitment to go to things because you're working a full day. A bit like, I don't know if you exam season or revision season at Trinity, where it's like, oh, I've spent 8 hours, slogging my guts out at a computer. The last thing I want to do is drag myself off to training, and you have to do it if you want to fence and you want to do it properly. For me, I'm also like, okay, where can I get my fitness and strength in? It's at 6 in the morning, and like, that's a horrific thing to try and do to yourself when you're working properly. Work has to be part of your life because work is paying the bills. But it's good to remember what else you want to do with your life, and letting them know as well. Like, my office knows I'm an international fencer. They know that when I leave at 4 o'clock instead of 6 o'clock to catch a flight, it's because I'm going somewhere to do a competition. And I think it's just being honest with people and balancing it. For me, actually, my other job is doing stunt work, and I found, to my detriment, this is actually much worse in terms of my fencing than an office job. And like, obviously the office job is incredibly tiring. And you don't want to go to fencing and you have to drag yourself there, but to go and do stunt work for like 3 or 4 weeks, where you are basically pretending to hit someone with a sword out of distance, to then go back and have to basically reset your mind, and everything you do is hit them in distance. Like, my actions become huge. I managed to lunge at someone and just miss them, and you're like, oh God, everything has been ruined by this. So that's a funny one. I think fencing and work can work. You have to be disciplined and you have to want it. Fencing internationally takes a lot of effort. If you want to get somewhere doing it, if you just want to go up and sort of have the high essentially of being able to go, yeah, this is my country and I'm fencing for it, and you want to do a couple of competitions a year, and I'm not knocking that. I like my first 3 or 4 World Cups were purely me being like, oh my god, I'm at a World Cup, as opposed to actually trying to do something. Then it doesn't take that much sacrifice. If you want to take it seriously, you have to be aware that everyone else is, and if you're not willing to do that and make those sacrifices, then it doesn't work. I think for me, I have to leave work early. I have to let my friends down at weekends. I've got family birthday parties where I'm like, sorry, I'm in Qatar fencing, and you have to make a choice on what's important. And I think that's difficult to do as well. You need to sort of choose sometimes life and sometimes fencing, and it's all about finding that balance, which personally I find very hard to do because I want to do everything. And it's sort of learning as you go along the way, but there's certainly sacrifices, and I'd recommend sort of choosing what you want to get out of it. If you just want to get the glory and enjoy being on that stage, then that's different to wanting to really commit and make something of it and go out and get your international points and see how far you can get and set yourself proper goals at an international level. This is probably going to sound incredibly naive. If you do anything well, it is a huge achievement. Winning a match to 5 against someone from the Japanese international team is a huge achievement. Losing a match 5-4 to someone from the Japanese international team is a huge achievement. You reset what matters in terms of wins. You reset your opinion of what a victory is. So for me, like if I can get out of the pools and win a DE, I have basically won the Olympics on that day, because you are fencing a standard of person who has done this for their entire life, who has a physio waiting behind the piste to go and massage them between points. You have an international coach who's traveled around the world for 50 years coaching people, and you've got yourself trying to work out what the hell's going on. So anything you can get is a huge achievement and a huge celebration of what you've been working on and what is possible. So for me, seeing victories almost in a smaller form, but they're much more precious, is probably what I enjoy the most. And it's quite funny because then you can't go to my mum or someone in my office and I'm like, oh my god, I had 3 wins today and I made the cut, and then I lost to like someone on the Japanese team, and they go, yeah, but you're like 100 and something in the competition, and you go, that is huge. But for someone who had never picked up a sword 5 years ago, so to be able to challenge these people is such a privilege. Some of my favorite moments have actually been, I don't know, my most recent competition, I was, wrecked in Budapest. I'd had about 3 hours sleep. I was not switched on in any way. And in my final match, I went, this match doesn't matter at all. She's the hardest lady in the pool. And she was, I think, 3-0 up. And I went, right, I'm going to change up my plan. I'm going to be aggressive. I'm going to try things. I'm going to trust my instinct for the first time today and go for these hits. And suddenly it's 3-3. Suddenly it's 4-4, and she has to actually do something about me. She can't just stand there and get the hits, and it's really hard to describe, but being able to stand up to someone who has done this since they were 5, and go, you actually have to deal with the person in front of you, you have to fight to win those hits, is incredible. And it's it's not winning the Irish Open, it's not getting tons of medals hanging on your wall from the Irish circuit, but it's incredibly precious and incredibly special to be able to do that. I would recommend, if you were thinking of sort of coming over to the UK, especially for competitions. It's thinking about the big opens like the Welsh Open, maybe the Milner Barry, I think, for the women, rather than the Miller Hallett, which is the guys, and a couple of the other opens that are sort of worth doing, because you do get the experience of just fencing a bigger pool of people. You're going to be doing the last 64, you might be doing the last 128, and the feeling of fencing that many DEs is quite different in terms of keeping your stamina up, keeping your energy up, keeping your focus up, adapting your style. It's just really good to sort of learn, and it gives you a different range of people to fence that, you know, you always get to fence in Ireland. Internationally, everything is just much tougher. I think for me, the real challenge was stepping up to that level. It's assumed that your skill is there, and the whole game becomes much more about sort of playing chess against someone. So I find both on the Irish and the British circuit, to a certain extent, you can work out what moves are going to work against someone, and then you can effectively do that on repeat from 15 hits to 5 hits till you've won. Obviously, you have to find the right timing, the right distance. You have to pull the action out of the other person. There's obviously a lot of challenge in doing that, and a lot of ways you can make a mistake in doing that. But if you hit someone in a certain way in an international competition, the likelihood is if you try and hit them in the same way again, they're not going to let you do it. So you already need to be planning, if you want to do a similar action, how can you draw it out in a different way? Can you fake that you're doing the same action and then get a different sort of counter riposte off that, for example? And it's much more about trying to draw something from your opponent. And actually probably in the first couple of matches, so I find it, even in a pool match, it's all about going, okay, the first minute is seeing how many different ways I can get someone to react. I'm not trying to get any hits at all. It's just biding my time, seeing what I can get in terms of a reaction, and then making a plan on specifically what I'm going to do, and then committing to it. Because if you're running in there trying to get sort of anything that isn't pre-planned, where you're not taking into account the sort of the person opposite you is also going to be having a plan and trying to break you down, then you've basically lost it before you've started, because it just becomes so much more mental as a sport. You need to be aware that you've, you know, done 3 seeks in a row. They're going to think, or they're going to work out that you've got a sort of a repeat action, and they can break through that. So you need to keep mixing things up. You need to be throwing things in their face in a much more sort of almost to distract them from what your real plan is. So I remember coming back from an international onto the Irish circuit, and I think I was like fainting at someone's wrist, and I just couldn't get a reaction because they didn't fence like that. They didn't want to react to a wrist hit. They wanted a sword in their face. And I remember sort of losing, I think, 3 or 4 or 5 hits at the start of this match, and I was like, what? I'm playing the mind games. I'm doing all the different things. I'm trying to read them. And you're like, no, you just need to look at them, work out what they do, where your hit is, and go for that hit. And it's just a different mindset. Both are incredibly important, because you have to fence on the national circuit and the international circuit if you want to be a really good fencer. So, you know, great if I can go out and win pool matches and get through in satellites and win DEs. But if I get onto my home circuit and I can't get any hits, then, you know, you're going to be ranked 99th in the country, and you're not going to get out to the internationals anyway. So it's all about finding the balance and adapting your mindset to what you need to do. Both require focus, both require effort, both require stamina. So yeah, it's just a little bit different. I would always recommend basically broadening your scope as much as you can. If you're lucky enough and you can afford it, going to a couple of internationals, especially the lads on the Irish circuit, you can do the Irish Open, and the sort of unlimited entries for you there. So get out there, see what it's like, see how people are different, see how seriously people are taking, you know, basically standing in a sports hall trying to win 3 medals with like vintage rules and things like that. But it's just a different game at an international level. I recommend doing it because there's nothing quite like getting knocked out of the pools and going, right, that's a lot of money and a lot of training that hasn't paid off, and why? And it sort of helps reset your training compass. I think there's definitely different stages of preparation, and each of those have a cost that you need to do. So first and foremost, right on your foundation, is you need to be training enough to be going to a competition. And if you're not training enough, then it's almost not worth it, because you're going basically to a competition to get angry at yourself for being inferior because you haven't trained. And it's sort of go, well, okay, everyone else here has, so what are you doing here? So I think, fortunately or unfortunately, the big foundation here is you need to be training, you need to be getting fit, you need to be staying strong because everyone else is. Then sort of building up to a competition, I'd recommend rest, I'd recommend carbs, fluids, sleep is crucial. But I think for me personally, I have in turn sacrificed each of those and done well, but also suffered. I think for me, sleep is crucial. I've tried to go to a competition having sort of, I remember, I think my most recent one in Budapest, my flight was delayed. I got in at 2:30 in the morning and I was up at 5:30 to try and get to the venue to fence. And you go, well, of course you're not going to be very good. That said, I've had other days where, because I was so tired, I forgave myself and didn't put any pressure on myself, and therefore relaxed and just focused on the task at hand and did very well. So fencing's a funny one, because I think a lot of it depends on where your head is at, and that is the hardest thing to prepare for. And there's no amount of training really that can do that for you, apart from being in a competition. Personally, and again, this is sort of up to you in terms of how you like to work, but for me, the best thing I could possibly do at an international, at a national event, whatever it is actually, at a friendly competition, is go out and do as many matches against as many different people to 5 as possible before you hit. Because if you've done 5 matches to 5 before you do your actual 5 matches to 5, you've basically already fenced a pool. And I know some of you will have experienced it maybe in Wests, for example, where you've got your first round of pools and you're like, God, what am I doing? I'm not in the game, I can't read the distance, my hand's all over the shop. And then it's like, well, it's okay, because you've got another whole round of pools to reset, and you don't get that liberty at a lot of competitions, especially at internationals. So it's going, I basically need to set myself up my own pool match before I even start. And yes, I'll be more tired. And for me, I'm like, well, my fitness should already be there. I should have trained my fitness, months ago. I should be able to do 10 matches to 5, not 5 matches to 5. And if I can't, then that's my own fault. It's all about going, basically, when I get there, I need to have got rid of all my rubbish fencing. I need to have worked out distance. I need to have worked out how to fence a lefty, a pommeler, all the different styles, so that when I get my pool and I'm standing there, I'm like, I've done all the, frankly, crap work, and I've got it all out of my system. I know how to read people. I'm in the zone, and I'm ready to actually go out and win these matches. Advice to anyone: don't fence the Irish Open and then try and run a marathon the day after. And then I tried to go to footwork on Monday, the day after, and I did a lunge and I couldn't get back up. So that was my lesson in the fact that I needed to recover. I think you have to judge it on each event. So if I fence a full day of fencing and I'm wrecked and I've had a really tough week of training, and I don't want to go to training on Monday, I go, okay, that works. If I've had a rubbish day at the weekend fencing and I did like 3 pool matches and they were all rubbish, and I get, I can't really be bothered, then you go, that's not an excuse, get yourself to training. So I think you need to feel it in yourself. Recovery is really important. I would say recovery is probably more important as a consistent thing than like a post-competition thing, personally. So like, you should be taking rest days. You should be eating well. You should be trying to sleep as much as you can. And they are long-term cumulative things that hold you in good stead, as opposed to going, I had a tough competition day, I'll take 1 day off before going back to my like mad schedule. It's really important to give yourself a break. It's also good to give yourself a mental break from fencing, because it can drive you totally nuts. My rule with myself is get yourself there, and if you've tried a little bit and you still don't want to do it, then go. Get yourself there and try, because a lot of the time I'll get myself there, I'll have a nice chat with someone, I'll feel really strong in the footwork, and then I'll go and fence and I have some amazing matches and feel brilliant. And it's worth it. But like other times I'll get there and I'll be like, oh God, this is just horrific, and I'll stop. I'm also getting better at stopping when the fencing isn't going well. But again, I think it's judging yourself and being harsh on yourself. You just giving up because you've lost 3 matches in a row and you feel rubbish and you can't be bothered to lose more matches tonight, or it's making you angry? Or are you fit enough and strong enough and capable enough to get back on that piece, really learn what it is to fence when you're feeling like crap and you're under pressure, and resetting yourself back to basics. So a lot of it is, for me, recovery and awareness and training and competitions is all just really turning back to myself and being like, are you being lazy, or are you being like genuinely honest with yourself and you don't want to be here? And if it's the second one, then fine, take it. If you fence the whole day of the Irish Open, I'd recommend taking a break afterwards on the next day. Equally, if you're just doing it because you can't be bothered, then that's a different problem that you need to tackle within yourself. The best way you can probably improve in a competition is to do as many competitions as possible, because you learn about yourself, you learn about your opponents, you learn about yourself in different circumstances. Are you tired? Are you stressed? Are you sleepy? Did you really want that medal today? Did you not care today? Were you really hungry? Or whatever it is. Basically, the more competitions you do, the more you can build up a sort of collage of what you are like as a fencer and how best to work. And that takes, frankly, years and years, and I'm nowhere near getting anything effective myself in terms of competitions. But I'd say that's the best thing you can do. In terms of trying to actually better your performance, if I've learned anything over the past couple of years, like I haven't been learning new skills. I don't get on piste and do like a flick to wrist seeks prime, step in close quarters to get my hits. I'm still getting a stop hit. I'm still getting a seeks parrot post. I'm still getting a flesh in opposition. All of my moves are moves that I learned probably in my first year of fencing. Being good at fencing, the more I do it, I think, is doing simple things really well at the right time and in good distance. So if you want to get better in a competition, I would actually give yourself competitions where you want to win and get points, and give yourself competitions where you want to try stuff. So maybe you go on and especially like Ireland's great for this, because you've got a first round of pools in a couple of competitions, either that don't matter or they become a combined pool. And if you go, okay, there's 5 matches in this pool, 3 of them I'll fence to win, 2 of them I'm going to try working on my footwork. I'm going to try the flick that I've been practicing in training. I'm going to try only hitting someone if they step in, and you just take it back to basics. And the more you train those, and the more you train those well and with energy and with focus, the better your instincts get. And frankly, when it comes to it, when someone's running at you with a sword, you really need your instinct to work. I remember talking to Colm about this in Trinity, and I still haven't found my balance. Personally, I fence incredibly well when I'm relaxed. So in training, I'll often do better than I will in competition, because there's no pressure to get hits and I'm trying things and I'm not stressing about where I am on the piste or what's happening. So to an extent, I think being relaxed is incredibly beneficial as a fencer. That said, probably not enough. And it comes back to sort of, you have to want it to an extent. Because if you're like super relaxed on piste and everything's working really well and the person opposite you really wants to win that match and you've got no pressure on yourself to win it, like you can have a nice match and you can do some good hits, but like you have to want it to do well, frankly, at a certain level. And Colin and I used to talk about finding your 7 out of 10. So for me, 10 out of 10 was like, oh my God, I want this so much. Yeah. And what happens at that point is I try and go stronger and faster, which usually amounts to like running at someone, probably not with my arm first. And if you're lucky and you fasten them and they're not expecting it, sometimes that works brilliant. A lot of the time you just run on someone's point and it's terrible. So for me, that's like, I want it too much. I also have a sort of 5 out of 10 where I'm like super relaxed, super in the zone. And like I'm fencing well, but I'm not fighting. So for me, it's like finding that balance between fighting and fencing. And I think there's a book called, it's actually a tennis book about, I think it's called Winning Ugly. I've read some parts of, but it's basically talking about if you put too much pressure on yourself, the magnitude of the event takes over what you have to do. You still have to do the stuff. So you need to want it enough in the moment to do the stuff well and to fight for the things you're doing, but you don't want the overwhelming magnitude of what you're doing to scare you. I remember coming back as #1 in Ireland and fencing in Souths and getting knocked out in the 32, having like been seeded first or second, because the pressure just killed me. So I think you need to find your 7 out of 10 for yourself and work out what you need to do. Do you need to listen to like really psyching up music and then something chilled when you're about to go on piste? Do you need to not talk to anyone? Do you need to have a conversation with someone and just be really relaxed and not thinking about your match? Do you need to shut yourself off and think about nothing but that match? And the only way you can work that out, sadly, is to go and do competitions and get really angry at yourself for having the wrong mental setup and go, oh, I wanted that too much, or oh, I was so lazy with that and I didn't want it enough, you know. And to consistently find that mental point is incredibly hard. And I don't think there's a secret, because I think people fence, like I fence at a 7 out of 10. Other people might fence incredibly at a 3 out of 10. So then it's all about how to chill out. Other people need to be at 10 out of 10, and what the hell are you doing to get yourself there? Nothing dangerous, but you have to work that one out, and then you like desperately scrabble from competition to competition, training to training to find it consistently. First person that comes to mind for me is a lady called Irina Embrich. She fences for Estonia. And what I love about her, what I hate about her, is that she's a lefty and she's incredibly fit and has been on the circuit for longer probably than I've been alive. What I love about her is her mental strength. You would not know for a second what is going on in her head. And I sort of trust that whatever's happening in a match, she's holding it together. She knows exactly how her brain works. She knows exactly how to control what she's doing in her head. She knows exactly how to switch the right things off. So all she can focus on is getting hits. And I've seen her win matches, I've seen her lose matches, and the response is always the same. And for me, I really struggle mentally in competitions in general. I have to put too much pressure on myself and then everything explodes, or not enough and everything like melts away anyway. So for me, watching someone who is just categorically disciplined in that way is incredibly exceptional. And she's obviously a beautiful fencer who never steps into distance, can sort of hit you off even if you sort of have a little shake of your hand and it's, you know, she's hit your wrist and you're just like, oh my God, what can I do? And those sort of people, like if you get a single light on them, that's a victory. My other favourite is actually a disabled fencer called Bebe Vio, who fences on the Italian team. For many reasons, I'll keep them small. She has no arms from the elbow down, and she has no legs from the knee down. She is so passionate, as only Italians can be, and just an absolute pleasure to watch on the piste. My favourite thing she's ever talked about was winning the Olympic gold, and I can't remember if it was foil or épée. And I think she talks about, I think it's 14-14, and it's between winning and losing a medal. And she says a line, and she talks about it afterwards. She goes, basically, you turn to yourself in this moment, and you go, this is the moment where you decide how much you want it. And for me, that's really interesting, because actually, especially at that level, you go, of course, you've all trained within an inch of your life. Of course, you're all the best in your countries. The difference in that moment is not your training or your ability or your strength or your fitness, frankly. It's one hit of your life. The difference is your want. and I always try and remember that, whether I'm up, whether I'm down, whether I'm equal with someone. I remember at the Welsh Open this year, I was beating a Swiss lady who was ranked way higher than me. I was basically beating her by 3 points. She levels it out, and there's a 1 minute break, and I turned to myself and I said this quote from Bebe Vio, and I went, you basically decide how much you want to focus and how much you want to win this. You know you can get the hits because you've got the hits. You know you're fit enough. So the only thing that is stopping you from winning this match, or, you know, letting you lose, is you and you deciding what to do. And and the guest rose to the pressure this time and zoned in. And I categorically went out there. I trusted my hits. And I think the first thing I did was a foot hit, which is a bit mad, but you go, yeah, I've got this and I can do this. And I decided to win that match in that moment. And I came out, I think, like 15-11. And she had no chance because I decided, which sounds quite bizarre, but there is so much in your resolve that you can do. And fencing people you idolise. I do this too much. So my first World Cup, I won one match, I lost everything else. And then I was basically stuck in Barcelona, actually, with Colm, who came out and supported me. And there was the Olympic gold medalist in the other room training from Hungary. And I said to Colm, I went, oh God, I'd love to have a photo with her, like a proper fangirl. And Colm went, do you want to fence her? And I was like, oh, can I do that? Yeah. So I go up with my kit, and I remember I'd forgotten to put my wire in. So like super unprofessional, I had to run back to the other room to get my wire so I could fence this lady. And people are very generous, to be honest, especially in a match to 5 at international level, more so when they don't have a match coming up or it's not 5 minutes before the pools start. But she was like, yeah, sure, I'll fence you to 5. And I was so relaxed. And I remember it got to like, I was 3-1 up. And I was like, oh my God, I'm beating an Olympian. And then she went, okay, she's having her fun, I'll hit her. But like 2 of the hits I did, I read what she was going to do. And then I did the correct sort of counter action to get the hit. And that for me was a good moment to go, if you plan against these people, and if you can work them out, they're no different from anyone else.
That's it for this video. In the next part of Quaran-Tea Time Q&A, Lucy will answer your questions about being a fencer during the lockdown. I hope you enjoy.